Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And you can see from the right honourable gentleman's remark the passion with which he has brought to this portfolio for many years and which I share. I do want to correct him. I don't disagree with the protests. I disagree with some of the methods, certainly not the message. And as I've said to the honourable gentleman before, I think he and I would have been out there carrying the placards ourselves just a few years previously. I do also want to pick him up on the challenge points that he makes. He's right to acknowledge that we were bold in asking for advice on a net zero economy. We're the first industrialised economy to do so. I will consider that advice carefully and proportionately, crucially work out how we are going to pay for it. He will know from his time in my office, in my seat, that the Committee on Climate Change was unable to recommend a net zero target when we previously asked for that advice because they didn't believe that it could be done cost effectively or indeed that we had the technology to do so. And it's right that we give that work the focus that it requires. He's absolutely right to say that this needs to be a whole-of-government approach. I was really pleased, Mr. Speaker, we had the Chancellor standing up and making the first ever green financial statement, bringing forward some extremely ambitious programmes to ensure that there will be no new homes built in this country reliant on fossil fuel heating from 2025. He asked me about declaring a climate emergency. The thing is, Mr. Speaker, I don't know what that would entail. I could stand here and say, I believe there is a climate emergency. He could say that. Many of our local councils have done so, including my own council of Wiltshire. The question is, what are you going to do about it? And that is why, Mr. Speaker, one of the things we should be proud of is the fact that we have, I think, the most detailed proposals for how we will hit our carbon budgets, and I'll answer his point on carbon budgets in a moment. He needs to look at, which I'm sure he has, what other governments have done. It's the easiest thing in the world for a politician to stand up and say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to set these targets, knowing that I will be dead and buried before those targets have to be met. The responsible thing to do is to set legislation in place, as he did, to bind every successive minister that comes along to meet those budgets or explain why, and to hold every future government's feet to the fire, and it is a fire in many cases, as he says, in terms of how we actually deliver our ambition. And the final point I wanted to make is he raised the point about carbon budgets. He will know that we are not woefully off. We are at 95 and 93% of where we need to be to meet budgets that end in 7 and 12 years' time. Well, and that is without even costing, for example, or calculating the challenges that we have had, the carbon savings we will have from the homes changes we've made. This is an ongoing process and one that we are absolutely, completely committed to deliver. I take his point about citizens' assemblies. The wonderful thing, Mr. Speaker, is that everybody can talk about this. This is now a national conversation that is happening. We have to engage with citizens, with businesses, with politicians, with local authorities, with bill payers, with taxpayers, with everybody, because there is not one single thing that will move this dial. We have to change everything. We have to do it rapidly, and we have to do it in a way that no future government can wiggle out of those responsibilities.
Sir John Redwood.
It's most important in this area that everything is